Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday night edition of Inside the Lines. I'm here with Jake to start. Steven's in the queue. He will be on here, but Jake has some college football surprise reactions, eye popping lines he sees for the upcoming week. So, as much as we love NFL value, we also love college football value. So, Jake, let's get into some of your eye popping lines and opening lines you've seen so far. We'll start with Louisville laying 4.5 versus Duke. What do you think this means for Riley Leonard?
Yeah, I mean, I think this line's indicating that Riley Leonard's more on the highly questionable side than questionable side. I think if Riley Leonard was healthy, this game would probably be maybe even Duke -1 or even.
Mhm.
Louisville was looking really good before they got blown out in their last game, surprisingly. So I think that this is more indicative that Riley Leonard's probably looking more out than in. I mean, his numbers weren't great against FSU, but they just moved the ball so much better when he was in compared
Mhm.
to their backup.
Yeah, I agree with that. So do you think this is something you wanna act now on necessarily, or just this kind of sparked the curiosity of, "Okay, he's probably not playing?"
Yeah, I think it's more spark curiosity. You could
Mhm.
probably, I mean, like we talked about all last week, that if you see him around in a walking boot on campus, then you might
Yeah,
want to get Louisville -4.5 because that could actually move a little more towards Louisville's direction because Riley Leonard means so much for that team.
right,
But I don't think it's an act now, right now, as of right now.
right. Let's move to our alma maters. Georgia playing Florida, biggest redneck tailgate ever. Georgia laying
Well,
14 and a
it's a
half.
cocktail party.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, this line originally it was some people were rumored that was going to open at 20. So Bowers moves the line quite a bit, and for a tight end, that's like QB numbers. How much he's moved the line. He's just so dynamic that they line him up in running back as a running back. They line him up as a wide receiver. He's an inline tight end. He's just all around such a good player and dynamic player. Oscar Delp is pretty good, so I think and that people might not be factoring how good of a replacement he is. So we have Georgia winning by 20, and I think this game's more like it's kind of treating Florida as home team here. I think if it was Florida versus Georgia in Gainesville, I think the spread would probably still be -14 in favor of Georgia. Florida, since Billy Napier has been head coach, they've just really struggled on the road. They got that comeback win against South Carolina 2 weeks ago, but besides that, he's really struggled against good teams on the road. South Carolina, I wouldn't classify as a good team.
Mhm.
So we have plenty of value on Georgia right now. Unfortunately, it's hard to say. I'll be there. I'll be at the
Yeah,
cock.
less, yeah. I'm into that. We'll move to USC. They're only laying 10 at Cal now. A lot of Caleb Williams questions, obviously not a great showing this past weekend. Do you think this spread should be bigger?
I do, and I think that this team that Caleb Williams might be sitting out the rest of the year is definitely impacting this line. I don't think he will,
Mm-mm.
but Emmanuel Acho, Danny Cannell, they both tweeted out he might as well just rest the rest of the season and get ready for the draft after they're out of the playoffs now with that loss against Utah. But if you look at Cal, they're not good at home, and they're really not good as home underdogs. And I think they've lost the 3 games that they've been underdogs by an average of 19.6 points. So even if USC is without Caleb Williams, Miller Moss is a pretty good backup. He's a 5-star recruit as well. I mean, it's hard for a quarterback to come in and play to the level of Caleb Williams, but they'll still be well off. But I think that this line's definitely taking into account that Caleb Williams might rest the rest of the season. But we would sit at USC -17. So I could see if Caleb Williams is going to play an inch closer to -13.5, -14. So this is more if you hear that Caleb Williams is playing and you're confident in that, I get USC now.
Mhm. Yeah, good to know. And if that's not the case, obviously a game that we'll keep our eye on through the week and be able to update you guys on and do some research on their QB2 if that has to be the situation. Now, good UNC only laying 11.5 versus Georgia Tech. To my information, Georgia Tech has been terrible and at home.
It's actually weird because Georgia Tech, they lost to Bowling Green at home, and then they went on the road and beat Miami, and Miami just beat Clemson. Uh, and then they got killed again this last week against Boston College, is not very good. So they have reverse splits. Both of these teams have reverse splits. UNC is much better on the road over the last 2 seasons, and Georgia Tech's much better on the road than at home. So I think this line is more if UNC was at home and Georgia Tech was on the road, because UNC, I think they're like 7-2 ATS on the road the last 2 years with Drake May as quarterback, and Georgia Tech, I think they're 1-6 straight up, and 2-5 ATS at home.
Mhm.
So I think this line is a reverse line. So I mean, I like UNC here, but you never know because they just lost to Virginia.
Yeah, not a lot of rules going on here in college football. Hard to keep up with. That's all the eye-popping lines we have for college football for now. We're going to let Jake get out of here. Of course, we'll have more through the week to talk about. So we're going to take him out, bring in Steven. Steven, let's get into the NFL. We'll talk about the games we can so far. These are the look-ahead lines before these games have been completed. So a lot will change, but Steven is able to forecast what most of these where these lines will go. So we'll show you what we can for now. We'll start with week 8, the Bills laying 8 in Tampa Bay after this loss to the Giants. Do you see this changing at all?
Well, so I had to pop my eyes back in after those high-popping lines from college football.
Oh,
but
yeah.
well, this one was so Tampa Bay lost to Atlanta and got significantly outplayed, much worse than the scoreboard indicated. But Buffalo was terrible again for their third straight first half, and they obviously lost to Mac Jones. And so the defense, the injuries on defense have really, you can really see it now. They didn't get much pressure on Mac, and then their offense, frankly, looks broken for 60% of every game. So I think this team's going to go from Buffalo -8 back to that key number of -7, even though Tampa Bay was not impressive, just because Buffalo's 3-game struggle.
Mm-hmm. And we'll go to Baltimore. Your Ravens looking awesome today. Now, right now, they're laying 7.5 points in Arizona, but you think this could probably get out of hand quickly.
Yeah, the narrative will come out, obviously, that NFC teams really struggle dealing with Lamar. They struggled before just purely on his speed and ability. But now with the new Monken offense clicking in, there's going to be even more of that problem. So, straight up, he's 16-1 now against NFC teams. I think Arizona's putting up a fight against Seattle. Seattle had some self-inflicted wounds. But assuming Arizona ends up losing that game, I think this line could get to double digits, even though Baltimore's on the road and going out west. The narrative will be like, well, look how good Baltimore did traveling to London, and then saying they didn't want to buy the following week. So there's going to be narratives that how good Baltimore can handle time zone changes, even though I don't know how legit that is, but that will be what people say when, because usually the one thing that you ding a team on when they're traveling cross country is that component. So that will, I think the confidence will all be in Baltimore's side.
I like that. Something you probably want to act on now if you do like Baltimore. Now let's go to the battle of the rookie quarterbacks. CJ Stroud going to the Panthers. I saw in your notes you mentioned that this line had originally, before the season, opened at Carolina. They were 3-point home favorites. Now we see that completely flip. Do you think this stays on Houston's side?
Yeah, our model has it right at the same number as well. So it's just interesting because Houston was I'll say this every time I have a chance, they were our number 1 pick for best value to go over their win total. And, knock on wood, it's coming in. So, yeah, I think CJ Stroud it's interesting, has picked up at least 3 points versus Bryce Young in a head-to-head. If Young was -3 to start back in April, May when the lines posted. I think another big thing is the defensive improvement that Houston's shown. They're allowing, I want to say, maybe 6 or 7 fewer points a game. They've made their run defense go from historically bad to just below average, and that's a big jump. It's like a batter going from hitting 100 and low on the inside to 200. It's not great, but it's going to help a lot. So I think that I don't think there's going to be any line movement because they're both teams are on a bye, so it should just settle in, especially at number 3.
Right. Let's go to a game where you do think there should be a little bit of steam. The Falcons in Tennessee. You think that the Falcons could get some of the public eye when this line opens up?
Yeah, I mean, the Falcons, anyone who was betting the Falcons has been going crazy with Desmond Ritter's 3 turnovers on the goal line. I mean, but everyone will pick up on the fact that Bijan Robinson was people didn't realize he must have been really sick. And so he barely got any plays. He didn't get his touch until the very end of the game. Will Levis is probably starting for Tennessee, and, he wasn't good enough to clearly beat out Malik Willis for the number 2 job. And we kind of saw how bad Malik Willis looked in limited time against Baltimore. So I think, just the losing Tannehill, who has not been good at all, but even the downgrade from Tannehill to Levis was 3. I think that Atlanta will get a lot of steam because people are like, okay, this team has just beat Tampa Bay, come back. They had a game-winning drive, clutch performance, despite the 3 turnovers. They got to be averaging 2 red zone turnovers a game for the last few weeks, and that's going to regress for the positive in Atlanta's side. So yeah, I think Atlanta's going to be being favored on the road at Tennessee.
Wow, good to know. So yeah, I guess if you do,
the coach for Atlanta is also the former OC for Tennessee, so he has some familiarity. That defense hasn't changed since he was there.
Right, correct. Let's move to the Raiders in Detroit. The Raiders still haven't shown much offense. Detroit looking like a pretty decent defense. Do you think so? You like the steam on the under, but you're not seeing a lot spread wise.
Detroit's a very good defense, just not against Lamar Jackson. So there were some plays where he was extending plays to 9, almost 10 seconds, and it was frankly, I was crying tears of joy.
Yeah.
Move on. My wife sent me some clips of my son playing basketball. I was like, screw that. I don't need to see that. I just, but anyway, so Vegas got killed at Chicago. So that's hard to do with, Tyson Bagent, I think this is how you pronounce it. So Vegas couldn't do anything offensively or defensively against a bad Bears team. So their 18-point loss, Detroit's 32-point loss, it's kind of the same. And no one thinks the combination of maybe Jimmy G coming back, Aiden O'Connell, and Brian Hoyer can do anything that the Ravens did to have the success they had against the Lions. So Detroit will get good, and Detroit is a good team. And when good teams get humiliated in a high-profile game, they come out and they'll probably wallop Vegas. So I don't think you're going to see any line movements because again you lost by 32. But if I had to guess, if there was movement, I would still think it goes to Detroit side.
Me too. I'm thinking this.
Motivation.
Yeah, my initial reaction was this still felt like a short line. I think this is a great line for Detroit right now.
Yeah. I like the steam on the under. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. That makes sense. We'll go to the battle of the home teams. New York Jets in/at New York Giants. Kind of an ugly game. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, it's one thing that's not going to happen is the last few weeks when it looked like there's a chance that Daniel Jones would play and then he's ruled out, the line would actually move as if Daniel Jones is worth something. I think it's pretty clear that Tyrod Taylor, the governor of Maryland, he's a big football fan, and he played like Hopkins, and he's like, I think I'm more afraid of Tyrod Taylor than Danny Dimes. So if Tyrod has to go again, I don't think the line will move as if they lost something in the case of the Giants. Giants defense has looked much better the last 2 weeks. They should have beaten Buffalo, and they held them to 14. They shut down Washington, held them to 7. So I see this game being low scoring. The line's already set, so low scoring. But I think there could still be some steam on the under, given the overall under trends going on this year. The Jets defense will be rested off their bye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would think that's something you'd probably want to act now on, considering that line is already pretty low. Let's go to the Saints playing in Indianapolis. Almost a pick 'em. Do you see this line teetering at all? The over under?
I actually think that the steam could go towards the Colts because they've ended up losing to the Browns, but the Colts, if not for some really superhuman plays by Myles Garrett leading to a block, field goal, and a defensive touchdown, they just put up a legit 38 against what people thought was on a historic pace defensively. And their running backs, Jonathan Taylor, looked like he did 2 years ago. And so, hey, Gardner Minshew ran for a couple touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So I think that when people look at it and they see New Orleans is kind of broken after that really disheartening loss, Derek Carr just keeps yelling at everybody and then saying he's not yelling at anybody, even though he's yelling right at their face. And it sure looks like, you're yelling at them. So I don't think his act is going over very well with this team. And he doesn't even, and people are even saying, well, maybe the reason why Foster Moreau dropped that ball is because he's so afraid of being yelled at by Derek Carr. I don't know. But I think that when people did dive into how good the Colts did look, except for that game, allowing the game losing drive, that the Saints just can't score. Mm-hmm. So if you got a Colts team that can put up 30 plus against the Browns at home, against a Saints team that can't score more than 17.
Speaking of teams that can't score, the Jags are in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh still can't score. The Jags, they won. They got it done, but it just isn't looking awesome right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Steelers. I'm saying this as a Ravens fan. Unfortunately, the Steelers just scored, and I'm not exactly sure how. So they actually have 24 points, and I think Kenny Pickett probably still has like 100 yards passing. They just do it with smoke and mirrors. They do it a lot on defense, obviously, but I think both teams' defenses have looked great. And the Jaguars, they put up points last week, but they didn't put up many yards. So I think the steam is going to be on the smart steam is going to be on the under. Maybe the public, because Jacksonville on paper scored 31, that Saints game went way over, and the Steelers-Rams game is going to go over. It's already scored 24-17 with a little under 6 to go. That will be enough for public thinking, oh, the overs to play. I think this. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a reverse line movement where the public percentage is on the over and the line still ticks down.
Right. We'll go to the Rams playing in Dallas. Dallas laying 6. Do you think this spread is appropriate?
Probably. I've been updating my notes through every drive. So when the Rams were struggling and they had 3 points at the first half, I was like, okay, I think this team's going to go to Dallas because people will say Dallas's pass rush defense very similar to Pittsburgh's, and if Rams can only put up 3.5, then they'll go to Dallas. But then they scored it before the end of the half, and they scored again, and then so I'm waffling back and forth. So I for now I'll just say no real call off -6. But I'll have to look about how the Steelers just put up that last touchdown.
Right.
The Rams, it also hurts that the Rams missed 2 field goals and an extra point.
I don't want to talk about it. That's one of my props.
Yeah.
Today I have so far been burnt by the Rams kicker, maybe not completely. And then Sam Howell on Sportsline, I had him at 15.5 rushing yards.
I was going to say we had 14.5 on our show.
Yeah.
So that's I was like, I saw it at 15. I couldn't remember what we had. So
yeah,
I just gleefully entered that 14.5, which is important to our show, which is why our show is so valuable.
Yes.
And when we do our things, it's so valuable because every week since we started, we have had either a win or a loss due to half a yard.
This is true. Tune in every day. Let's move over. Browns stay on the road going to Seattle. Seattle laying 2. Do you think the Browns can come back from this situation? Do you like Seattle here?
I do like Seattle because Deshaun Watson went out with what looked like a concussion. And before that concussion, he threw an awful interception because his injury was clearly bothering him. He couldn't get anything on it. He was coming up 8 yards short on a 15-yard pass. And he threw another pick that I think was ruled not a pick for various reasons. So he's either really hurt or they don't have anyone who can really play. Now, they did come back to win. But that aside, I think that Seattle, while struggling and only up by a touchdown at home, through against they have no DK Metcalf, and he was a last minute inactive. So assuming he's well by next week, and Jackson Smith and Jigba played really well this week. Jake Bobo had a great, amazing touchdown. So I think the steam will be on Seattle, especially at number 2. I think that goes. Everyone would be like, well, okay, so the Browns defense is kind of fraudulent. They aren't the all-time great defense that we thought they were. So Seattle wouldn't be surprised they got the 3.5 or 4.
Okay, so that's good to know. It's probably an act now. Another game still going on. Kansas, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce looking pretty dominant right now. They're still up 24-17 to the Chargers at this moment.
Yeah, it should have been 31. They got a turnover on a questionable whether he had possession before the fumble. So I was bummed as someone who took 5.5, KC at 5.5. But yeah, their offenses look good. Their defense has stepped up in key moments. Denver is taking advantage of anemic Packers offense. So the Packers are coming back, but Denver's not exact. I don't think anyone's going to think Denver shutting down the Packers is indicative that their defense is fixed. So but people will look at Kansas City likely on pace for 30 points and think, okay, they're back to being the 30-point team that we're used to. So I think that I think there won't be that much major line movement, but the Chiefs end up covering and putting up 31. I could see this easy going to 9.5, especially if the Packers come back to win, which they are driving.
Let's move to the one last game that we can talk about tonight. The Bears will be at the Chargers. Chargers laying 9.5. You think Chicago could get some love when this comes out?
Yeah, I mean, this Tyson Bagent, I didn't watch every second, but from what I saw that he was dunking his way without making mistakes. Team end up scoring 30. The defense end up shutting down the Raiders. and he hasn't done anything that would lead you to believe that he can't keep doing it. I don't know what the running back situation for Chicago will be. I saw Foreman had 3 touchdowns, but he also kind of was limping off the field at one point late. But assuming that they'll maybe have some of the other guys back that have been, their starters have been out. I think that the Chargers defense is still struggling. They're last, I think, in yards heading into this Chiefs game. And Patrick Mahomes had 340 yards at the 3 quarters passing. So they still got to be near the bottom of that list. So I think that 9.5, I think the Chargers, especially with their lack of home field advantage, could go back down to Chicago +9, +8.5. So if I want to act on Chicago early.
Okay, yeah, good to know. So a few minor act nows to think of, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bears here, if you would like them. So a lot to look into, a good episode to watch back, honestly. We'll go over the games that we weren't able to go over tonight through the week. We're on through Friday again, so stay tuned for that. Lots to come, more college football, a lot of injuries to monitor, etc. We'll hit a little bit of NBA coming up this week. Are you excited about that?
Very. Oh, I will say the Miami game, if Miami does not look good against Philadelphia and struggles offensively,
Which they will not.
Then New England, with what they did in Buffalo, I mean, that Miami number was -12 in the early look ahead. That could reopen at like 7.5, 8 if Miami looks like a team that only beats up on the weak and gets contained by anyone decent. So watch out for that one.
Could be a New England moment if you like them now.
And Philadelphia can go from -5.5 to -8.5 if Philly looks like a world beater.
Right. Which they will.
Yeah, no pressure.
They will. Manifesting.
Yeah.
All right. Good stuff tonight, guys. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock with the rest of the things. But if you have any act nows, use this information as you will. This is the best value you can get right now. So good luck with your bets the rest of the night.
Post right now on FanDuel and DraftKings. So.
Oh no. That's our time to get off. Good luck with your bets, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.